Punk Rock Elite, a podcast about NOFX. Hello, welcome to Punk Rock Elite, a podcast about NOFX. I'm Eddie French, and I'm here with my co-host Red Redmond.
Hello, how are you?
I am all right, thank you. We've decided to make this podcast about NOFX because they are finishing. They're stopping. They are calling it quits after 40 years, and we thought we should probably do something to commemorate that. No one's asked us to. Some people have suggested we don't, but we're going to do it anyway. So we're going to be having guests on talking about records and songs, in particular their relationship with the band. For anyone who doesn't know, I don't know why you'd be listening if you don't understand what the title was and what the words in it were. Some people do. Some people have a lot of commuting to do. So NOFX, a punk rock band from California, formed in 1983 and unforming in this year, the year of recording 2023. So they've got 15 full-length albums. They've got about 17 EPs. They've got some live albums and compilations. They currently comprise of Fat Mike on vocals and bass, Aaron Aberta, known as El Jefe, on guitar and trumpet and vocals, Eric Melvin on guitar, vocals and accordion, and Smelly, Eric Sandin, as he's known to his friends. Actually, he's known as Smelly to his friends, on drums. And that's who we're talking about. I am Eddie French. I'm a comedian and I do other things as well, assorted entertainment. And I've been a huge fan of NOFX for a very long time. That's not what we're talking about today, because we are talking to my friend, colleague, co-comedian, and General Redmond, Red Redmond, not General Redmond. I don't remember you being military. And if you have, I'm impressed that you've achieved the rank of general. Such a short time in it. Red, please introduce yourself.
I'm impressed by. I'm impressed by the rank that you've given me there. Like, I think I've done very well in the armed forces, as it sounds. I'm really looking forward to this. Been a big fan of NOFX for a long time, and I kind of can't believe that it's coming to an end. I mean, like, and so soon as well. Like, we've already got our tickets for NOFX's, or one of NOFX's final shows in the UK, and it's scary how close it is.
Yeah. It is. I don't think I've processed it yet. It's a really strange thing.
I haven't at all.
No, it's so weird because I really, really love NOFX. And I sort of feel like they've constantly been there since I was a teenager. And it's very strange. It's like sort of finding out that your mate is moving to Canada. We live in the UK, by the way. Canada's pretty big, but, you know, it's a weird thing. It's like someone's leaving the party early, ironically, for NOFX. It
feels a little bit unfair as well when, you know, Fat Mike has always said that NOFX would go as long as Bad Religion, you know, as long as Bad Religion are performing, NOFX were performing. That's what he's always said. But obviously, you know, Bad Religion still touring, and NOFX have decided to throw in the towel. I think that's an interesting decision.
Yes.
I mean, also, I imagine a lot of the decision is down to, you know, like they said quite an unfortunate joke at a Las Vegas show a few years ago. Yeah. And my understanding is it hasn't been as bad over here in the UK, but in America, my understanding is that they've really struggled to actually perform, like to find venues that would, you know, keep the bookings in. And there's been a lot of protests. Over you know, an unfortunate joke, a joke that I would say is not dissimilar to things they've said in the past, but I can understand why it was you know, they went too far with it, obviously, and I think they'd admit that. But it's a shame nonetheless.
It was crass and tasteless, certainly. But again, I've probably seen them say similar, if not worse, but possibly at gigs where camera phones weren't quite as big a thing, and maybe not something quite so horrible and recent.
Yeah, I think,
We come here not to praise Fat Mike, but to bury him.
Well, he said in his own words, hasn't he, that he doesn't stand by what he says, and or I think it was actually a
No,
joke that Melvin said, but
it was, yeah.
like he doesn't stand by those sentiments. And I think it was actually wasn't it Fletcher from Pennywise who sat him down and chatted it through with him and sort of going like, look, these are people who have lost someone, and to be laughing at that so close to the event is probably a little bit too far. And like he's admitted that was probably
If that was
good
Fletcher,
advice.
yeah. If that Fletcher thinks you've taken a joke a bit too far, from what I understand, that's very possibly quite the indictment. if if Greg Graffin sat down and explained to him over a book,
Yeah.
or why. I assume that's how he does stuff, Did a small lecture to him with his whiteboard, explained it, and go, well, I do get that, but, whatevs. If Fletcher goes, mate, that was a bit much, maybe you've gone, yeah, all right, that was a bit much, yep. Because they had a whole year's worth of shows cancelled in the US.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think they came to Europe and Australia, yeah. I don't know whether they found that difficult to do that here, but
well, I think over here they've been just kind of sticking with Slam Dunk Festival and running a stage for them for the past few years. And I believe these shows are tied in with Slam Dunk in some way as a promoter, I believe.
They are, yes, they are. The sort of like punk and drublic festivals that they were doing. They don't have the beer promotion here, but
right,
the US they had the punk and drublic where they had free beer until that ran out. 5 bands, 1 stage, and all hand selected by Mike. And so Bad Cop, and Lagwagon,
the Bomb Pops,
precisely. Yeah, you'd get the crop of friends and label mates. For those of you who don't know, Fat Mike runs Fat Records. I feel like I have to add that in. I don't know why you'd be listening to this if you didn't already have a baseline understanding, but every podcast is someone's first, I guess. So for the sake of completion, I'll keep doing that. So that was the Punk and Drublic Festival that they took around, basically because they got cancelled. They had to just buy a parking lot and run it on their own thing.
I think it just goes to show, doesn't it, that if you are going to cancel a band, you may as well go and cancel a band with a lot of experience in just DIY events.
Yeah.
they're gonna be able to weather it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're both kind of low key cut up about NOFX calling it a day, which don't think I've felt that. Have you ever felt that about a band before?
No, not for a long time. I mean, I'm constantly in a state of being fearful that bands I love may break up. I'm a huge fan of the Bronx, and I just feel like there's a chance that they might call it a day, and I'm constantly live in fear of that. But no, I think this is the first band in a long time that's that I've been upset is calling it a day. And I think it's because not just because of how great their own music is, but NoFX is so intrinsic in the punk scene in general and in the sound of punk music over the last 20, 30 years. And I think that as much as I'm mourning the loss of NoFX, I suppose I have to look at the bright side of maybe Fat Mike's going to have more time to spend on Fat Records, because I think that the musical output of that record label is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think that the work he does in the music industry away from NoFX is just as good as his involvement in the band itself.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where I've heard him say, people who got Fat Records tattoos in the 90s, he thinks that most of them are probably still proud of them rather than going, oh, I better get this covered up. How much for an epitaph? It's one of those. And because he's done other stuff, he's done Honest Don's records, which was for sort of non-fat sound bands, and I think for a while there was a label called Pink and Black, which is focused more on female-fronted groups, and like Fabulous Disaster, they were on there, and the Dancehall Crashers, I think.
Great.
There's all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's all that kind of thing. It is strange to have them calling it quits. So anyway, let's go and deep dive on Red Redmond and their relationship with NOFX. When do you first remember hearing NOFX?
Like I came to NoFX a little bit later than I'd like to admit, really. I mean, like I was, fully aware of them throughout school and stuff, but I became a fan of them in my early 20s. 21 to 24 was when I was like, when I first started sort of like listening to them, started to go and see them live. I've probably seen them 3 or 4 times at this point. And I've been a fan for as long as I've heard their music. I think that, I feel like it's NoFX is the sort of band that I wish they were a little bit bigger when I was a teenager, because when I was a teenager, everyone was listening to, like the worst Green Day albums.
Yeah. Warning.
Like, because Green Day, yeah, well, no, I would say like Green Day used to be like, all right, like earlier stuff I'm a big fan of. But then like American Idiot onwards is basically when I was a teenager.
Right.
And that was basically what people thought punk was. So when I was a teenager, people thought punk was like Green Day and Fall Out Boy. Right. And it's really frustrating when I grew up and realized that actually there was a lot of really good punk music around at that time.
Oh, yeah.
That for some reason hadn't made its way to rural Derbyshire.
What? The D.
I know, right?
That's what the DB in D beat stands for, isn't it? Derbyshire. The Derbyshire beat. That's crossover Derbyshire shit. It's really, really good.
The initial single, I think, was quite enjoyable of American Idiot.
Yeah.
I think that with it being like a concept album, with them doing, like Boulevard of Broken Dreams, which kind of just sounds like, well, I mean, I think it's quite obvious that they're trying to do Oasis.
Yeah.
But,
it is the Wonderwall chords.
Yeah, exactly. They nicked them off the Beatles, so,
What? Never heard that theory. We'll go into that in our next podcast. Be Here Now. We'll name it after the best and most loved of all the Oasis albums. That's what we do. So you were fat reckless. You were being given the sort of the major label punk, which, and I don't know about Fall Out Boy, but certainly Green Day and NoFX definitely gigged together over the years before either of them were successful, Mike's talked about how he's friends with Billy Joe and he thinks that Mike Dirnt is weird, So maybe he is. I've never met him. Do you know who or when it was that people who introduced you to NoFX, or when the first time you sat and listened to it, or?
Well, I think, like when I was early 20s, like maybe I'd just turned 20 or something, and I was like desperate for, like I'd used to like, as soon as I find a genre that I really like, I kind of want to know everything about that genre. I kind of want to find all of the key players that have like helped build that sound. And when I was getting into sort of US punk, because I've always been a big fan of like UK punk as far back as I can remember. But I think it was in my 20s where I started to get into, US punk of like the late 80s, early 90s, noughties. Because, as I said, when I was at school, you could be tricked into thinking that American punk was later AFI and later Green Day and stuff that, it isn't kind of what excites me now. But then when I was in my early 20s, I discovered, like the all of the good punk bands, like all of your Rancids, Bad Religion, NoFX would be like the big players, and then I'm a huge Dropkick Murphys fan, amongst others. And I actually think it was at an Edinburgh Fringe Festival where we were sharing accommodation, and I think that you basically gave me a hard drive. Full
I
of,
did,
everything that I ever needed to listen to.
That's true. I remember that. Yeah, we that's right, because we didn't know each other. We had a mutual friend, and who was
Yeah.
doing the Fringe. They said, I said, "Hey, mutual friend, where are you staying for the Fringe?" And he said, "Oh, there's a place in a flat going." I'm not telling you his name, but that is how he sounds.
It's a good
There's a
impression.
place in a flat going. Yes, good. Yeah, solid. Because I didn't spend a month with him because I immediately signed on to go into this flat, and he went, "Oh, I'm not going the Fringe anymore. Bye." So it was you, me, a famous boy, and someone from Greece who all lived in this flat together. And the famous boy was off with his friends, which is perfectly fine. He wasn't famous then. He is now. He's very good, very nice. I like him.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah. The man from Greece, I hear nothing about him anymore, and that's fine. All comedians, by the way, not just a Greek guy who wanted a nice long holiday. Then had the money to spend.
Very expensive holiday during the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yeah, I do remember saying, "Oh, if you like that, here's got a clip drive, a flash drive, load of stuff," and that was in your ears for the rest of the month, as I recall.
Because I was already into like there were certain bands that I had a good like knowledge and understanding of. You know, I was really into Amen. Who I love their did they only do 2 albums? Death of Music and We Have Come for Your Children or something.
Oh yeah.
I think that's what they were called. But I'd always just struggled to find bands like that. You know, like as I was saying earlier, you know, like if I were to Google at the time, which was kind of a not a new thing, but it certainly wasn't as useful as search engines are now. But if I were to look for American punk, I would get sort of like sent down the whole Green Day, AFI sort of rabbit hole, when actually I was kind of looking for, you know, hardcore really. And I think it was you that like put me onto Leftover Crack and stuff like that.
I did, yes. Sorry about that in hindsight. the Crack Steady 7 and that kind of thing. Yeah. That sort of, because it was the next logical step from Operation Ivy, that whatever members of that particular scene have gone on to reveal about themselves. You know, we're not the drama channel, guys. No tea spilt. That sound, it was where Operation Ivy were headed.
Yeah.
It was taking that hardcore and ska blend that bands like Random Hand do it as well. It's not ska with a cheesy grin on the face.
Yeah, sure.
It's not where your trumpet player is dressed as a bee for fun. You know, it's not that kind of, you know, circus ska. And I mean that with all due respect, because I've seen plenty of it and I enjoy it just fine. It's just context, you know, it's fine. But it's not the stuff that really thrills me. Because
there's some real Big Fish fans listening to this who are furious right now.
And they also know the exact DVD that I'm referring to because I own it and I enjoy it. Anyway, Josie Long, the comedian, she was being interviewed once about something, and she said that when she was younger, she was a really big fan of Hole because she hadn't heard Bikini Kill yet.
Fair.
And Hole were doing that thing that was like Bikini Kill, but not quite.
Yeah.
So there's something here, there's something, and then you go Bikini Kill, and you go, that's the thing I've been looking for.
Yeah.
So and I remember you saying that your friends who were quite into sort of more cheerful ska, upbeat stuff.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the ska punk, so you were clearly getting that thing going, oh yeah, that's all right. And then you hear that sort of harder version.
I was aware of, you know, like, bands around that sort of like, you know, around that scene. So like I was big into the Mad Caddies. Because I was about to say I used to, but I still do smoke a lot of weed. So,
yes.
You know, and Mad Caddies is perfect sort of like, you know, chill out with some friends and smoke a bong in their back garden sort of vibes. So like I was big into like Mad Caddies, but again, like didn't know that they were on Fat Records and didn't know their connection to NoFX.
So you're in your early 20s, right?
which I'm not anymore, sadly.
No, none of us are, dear. None of us are. So you're living in Manchester.
Hmm.
You've started doing comedy. Started doing comedy while you're at uni,
Yeah,
actually,
when I
didn't you?
was like 18, I started far too early and was shit for a good few years.
Well, if you have a look at any of my early work, you can see that you don't have to start early to be shit for a few years. You're in Manchester, the good music scene in Manchester.
Yeah.
Have you found people take you being a fan of NoFX? Because they are divisive.
They can be, yeah. I think that a lot of the anger towards NoFX normally comes from misunderstanding. I know that I've heard a few people hear the odd NoFX lyric and assume that, like for instance, that Fat Mike may be transphobic, which I think you couldn't be further from the truth.
It seems unlikely to me.
Absolutely, but I have heard these. I have heard people say as much. I think a lot of it is just like misunderstanding.
I've witnessed a misinterpretation
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think there was a song on one of his more recent albums, which is, is very clearly about that, about not feeling a part of like the latest wave of gender activism, I
Yeah.
suppose. But I
It's
don't think that it
fuck
comes from a
euphemism,
place
wasn't it?
of. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
From
I don't think that
from
it's.
Double Album, one of the last two records.
Yeah, that's the one. Um, and I think, I don't think that it comes from a place of anger. I think he's just sort of like trying to explain where he is culturally.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that he's obviously like, he's fine for people to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
he's just talking about his own position in it. And, like he's much older. And I think to expect someone of his age to be a part of the super cool, youth movement is a little bit unrealistic. But I know
Mike
that
is
he
not
doesn't.
on TikTok.
Yeah,
He's not
that's it. Yeah.
not getting the latest memos on what's all right and what isn't. He's generally going around going, "I like it when people are allowed to be themselves, and it makes the world better." And then he doesn't they them a non-binary person initially, and then presumably does after they go, "Oh, soz," as far as that goes. If you look at the support he gave to Laura Jane Grace
Yeah.
from Against Me when she came out, and Transgender Dysphoria Blues came out on Fat, and I think they did. Their bass player and drummer left at roughly the same time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
One because they were an arsehole, and the other, I don't know which way around it was. One just because they were like, "No, I was going to leave anyway," but this does look bad on me. I do appreciate that.
Sorry.
I didn't have this marked in the diary.
Didn't one of Against Me's drummers, aren't they with Slipknot now?
I don't know. It's not Atom Willard though.
I think that because didn't Laura Jane Grace do like a tweet once where she was like, she was like shit talking an old drummer of hers. She was like, "Isn't it a nightmare when your drummer doesn't like turn up to rehearsal? Miss beats and cues, blah blah blah, all this." On an unrelated note, good luck with that, Slipknot, or something like that.
Wow.
I don't think I've made that up. I'm pretty sure that happened.
We'll find out. Send us a message. Let us know if you know which band that was actually related to, or if Red made it up. We'll find out. NoFX have a song that is literally an excuse for them to tell ethnic jokes to each other,
Yeah,
They-
yeah.
arming the proletariat with potato guns. Sort of Herb Albert trumpet going on, and then they just stop and go, "Hey, have a Mexican joke? Oh no!"
I think that what I quite like about NoFX is that they're constantly on that line between being serious and nothing should be taken seriously.
Yeah, yeah.
They're like constantly playing with that, like because there are some things that they believe quite rightly like should never be taken seriously, and like I think that they would include themselves in that. Like anything that is directed at themselves,
First and foremost, yeah,
is, like,
absolutely.
very very silly and stupid. But then like there's so many songs like one of my favorites of theirs, I think it features on a few, it's like a B-side on a few things, but and there's a few different versions of it as well, but a song called You're Wrong
Yeah,
is
yeah.
very 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 like serious and to the point, and isn't a joke at all.
No.
But somehow it does stand up next to their sillier songs.
Oh yeah,
Um, I don't know, like it's. I think it's quite an impressive back catalogue, really, for that reason.
you're right. I do love the fact that the same band that can write New Boobs
Yeah,
can also write She Didn't Lose Her Baby. Who does that? That's it's not like Anti-Flag suddenly come up with a hilarious Oompa song to slap in the middle of their one of their albums. Yeah.
they should though. They
I mean,
should. Like
absolutely they should, yeah.
they need to start changing it up a
Of
little
course, yeah. So you've seen NoFX a few times, you say. Any sort of standout memories from any of those times?
You know, I've seen them probably 3 or 4 times. I think the thing that always stands out with NoFX is like they are just fucking about. Like
Hmm.
like they've got their set list and stuff, and they will get through it to the best of their ability. That ability
Yeah.
may waver throughout the
Hmm.
show. I love that sometimes they'll finish a song and they'll just be like, "No, we didn't do that one very well tonight."
Yeah, yeah.
I love that honesty.
We
But I
can't
also
do that
think
with
the thing
jokes. No one ever says, "Oh, I didn't tell that one very well tonight."
that. No, you're right, and I also think one thing that always stands out from their stage show. I've always liked the concept of their backdrops slowly getting smaller throughout the show. So if
Yeah.
you're a fan of NoFX, you probably know what we're talking about.
Mm.
But they have a backdrop towards on the back of the stage, which isn't as large as you'd like it to be. They comment on it not being the size they'd like it to be. So then it is then immediately it falls to the floor in a sort of like a kabuki drop type way to reveal an even smaller sign.
Yeah.
And this happens throughout the show about 4 or 5 times until it reveals the tiniest of banners.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a lot of fun.
The NoFX written in gaffer tape on Smelly's kick drum is bigger by the
Yeah.
end of the backdrop.
It's just emphasizing their DIY roots, and it's lovely to see that when I mean, I've seen them on stages as big as like Download Festival,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's lovely to see them stick with the same stage show despite being on a massive stage.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it really does show up the sort of very entertaining but synthetic nature of a band. So I'm going to go for some really low hanging fruit here, say like Steel Panther, who are
Yeah.
deliberately synthetic and silly. They're aware of it, so it's not the best example, but like can't quite think of a band who are like Steel Panther but aren't in on their own joke. Just escape me for a moment. They do exist.
It's Guns N' Roses, isn't it?
Oh.
Well, I mean, it's at
Yeah,
least
yeah, it
Axl
is.
Rose
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Guns N' Roses.
Bloody
I'm
hell.
certainly I'm certainly a fan of Duff and Slash.
Yeah.
I think like they're phenomenal musicians, really cool people.
Yeah, yeah.
I was a big Velvet Revolver fan.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I would never pay to see Guns N' Roses,
No.
particularly not now.
We've got a list of questions here that we're going to ask everybody who guests. This is the first outing of the Punk Rock Elite questionnaire. Red Redmond.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favourite NoFX song?
Favorite song?
Mm-hmm.
I always get it wrong, and the amount of times that I've shouted the name of this song at my Alexa, and she still doesn't know what I mean. What's it? It's on War on Errorism.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? I think it's the second track. Is it Irrational?
The Irrationality of Rationality.
That's exactly it. The Irrationality of Rationality. That's my favorite
Yeah, yeah.
NoFX song.
Oh, is it good, isn't it, as well? Starts off
I
with
really-
the bass.
Yes, as so many great NoFX songs do. And yeah, I think that is by far like my favorite song of theirs. But I like a lot of different ones of theirs. Like there's the odd song that really like jumps out at me. Like even more recent songs, like I think 6 Years on Dope is a brilliant track.
Oh, delighted when that one came out. I
Right.
remember my friend Owen, who I was in a band with when I was teenagers, and he was never never as into that sort of US punk as me. He liked things a little artier and stuff. He did enjoy it, mind, but even he commented and said, "Wow, this is really, really good." After all those years, you put the Mel Yell in anything, and it's gonna work. Just love Melvin's voice, and that's why a lot of their latest stuff there's a lot more Melvin in it. This is sounding really good.
Yeah, you can't beat a good Mel Yell.
Oh, mate, the irrationality of rationality, because it's a serious one. It's about social issues, problems. The drums are so forward in that mix as well. It's brutal, just like exactly what you want of sand and cricket bat. Brilliant. It's got a bit where the goes to nothing but sort of keyboards and then comes back in, just launches at you. Oh yeah, great choice, Red. Do you know what? Always one I sort of forget about until I hear it again, because they just sort of put it in behind the opening track. It's got that annoying children sample at the beginning, you know. Oh, great choice. Well done, Red. What's your favourite album? Full NOFX album.
Full NOFX album. Like I like different ones for different reasons, which I think you're probably a lot of people are gonna say the same. You know, like oh dear, because I think Punk in Drublic, you know, it might be Punk in Drublic because like I think that it's. I think you'd struggle to find a NOFX fan that wouldn't say it's one of their strongest. I think it's got some really, really great high points, and then like I think the album tracks on Punk in Drublic, the ones that are like lesser heard, are still really interesting, and there's actually some like real like deviations from their usual formula.
Yeah.
But I also. I quite like some of their lesser loved albums. I'm quite a big fan of Coaster.
Oh, yeah.
I think Coaster's got some really, really, really great tracks on it.
Yeah.
I'd struggle to find, like, I don't think there's a NOFX album that I dislike. I think I like them all in a similar range. You know, I think, even like Pump Up the Valium is great. I think they are all great. But I think if I had to come down on one album, I think it might be the album that I first heard of theirs start to finish, and I think that is Coaster.
Ah, okay.
And I totally understand if people like if someone's go, oh, I don't think Coaster is their best album. That's totally fair. Like I understand the arguments why it isn't. But I think just because of my
should specifically phrase this question to be favourite, not best.
Well, in
Personal
that case, it comes down to my own personal experience with NOFX.
Exactly.
And the first album that I listened to start to finish was Coaster. So I think that's what I'm going to go with.
Good. Yep. There's plenty to like on Coaster. You got the Quitter. We called it America. Great stuff on there. Yeah.
Yeah. Blasphemy. Suits and Ladders.
Oh yeah, that is a good one. Yeah. Also the was one about Iron Maiden.
Oh yeah.
I find myself reaching towards the skip button occasionally.
Is that Eddie, Bruce, and Paul?
Paul and Bruce, I think.
That's it, yeah. And that song actually reminds me of parts of Punk in Drublic, where they just suddenly go into like weird hair metal guitar that is just not usually expected.
No, it's clearly the bit that's making Hefe the happiest that day.
Yeah, right?
He's like, I'm not really into this punk music, but playing with this band is fun, so occasionally you get to throw in a wah solo and I can pretend I'm in Metallica for a bit. You know, you have a favourite lyric?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that right, I quite like the lyrics on Seeing Double at the Triple Rock.
Yeah.
Because they haven't even attempted to make some of them rhyme.
No. Very few rhymes in NOFX, actually.
I mean, obviously, there's, you know, like if you're stuck in Minnesota and there's a drinking quota, but like there's a couple bits of that just are very jarring to the song, but I find that quite beautiful in its own way.
Yes, that is good. You're right. Do you have a favourite memory of NOFX?
A favourite memory?
Or like a memory that NOFX has coloured in some way?
So when I saw NoFX at Download Festival, they were on the second stage, whilst the headliners had started. Like the main stage headliners had started, and they were on the second stage. So the main stage headliners that evening were Black Sabbath.
Oh, right.
It was the last time Sabbath ever played Download, and NoFX were on the second stage. And Mike would just stop playing every now and then because he really wanted to hear Black Sabbath. He was like less interested in doing his own set than he was in just hearing Ozzy do fucking Crazy Train or whatever.
Imagine Hefe was doing his impression of him.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't you? I saw them at Download when the headliners were the, the Rage Against the Machine, Audio Slave.
Oh wow.
Audio Slave were headlining, and NoFX were on in the tent, and Mike got Hefe to like just tap the strings of his guitar in a random order and go, "That's what you're missing by being here." It was really, really funny. The shit talking about other bands is really, really funny. It's especially funny when they're taken too seriously. Like the number of times Henry Rollins has tried to kick Mike's head in has been on the warpath because Fat Mike has, in my opinion, accurately pointed out that he was the worst singer in the whole of Black Flag. So, every time I say that, Henry gets really mad at me. You'd have thought it'd just rise above. He'd just rise above, but apparently he doesn't.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you. Teeing that one up. Nice. For a non-fan, and there are some out there,
sure.
What do you think is the best way in to NoFX?
I think, going back to what I said about like when NoFX were at their height and I was listening to worse music, or like when I was a teenager, there was just like worse music about. I think that you've got to like tie them into the type, like the scene of music that they were a part of. And so I think if you've never listened to NoFX before, I'd give you Franco Un-American.
All right.
And like I'd say, hey, remember when like Green Day did all those like anti-Bush gigs? Well, NoFX also did those, and this was around then, and I think that would just put them into a context that most people would understand. And then from there you can play them, more quintessential NoFX stuff. But I think Franco Un-American is a good start.
Yeah. There's a melody, there's a chorus. I mean, there's a melody in all of them. There's actually a chorus in that one. Yeah, the standard songwriting structure. There's no chorus in a lot of NoFX songs. They take up too much time, and Mike doesn't like repeating things. And in fact, I think some of their songs that I'm less interested in tend to be more standard song structure, like Oxymoronic from one Last Ditch Efforts.
Yeah.
It's not a huge fan. It's one of the first time he's gone back to just doing as many puns as you can fit in at once kind of song, which fine, no problem with that really. It's also just less interesting than most of the other songs on that otherwise very good album.
I agree. I find myself like skipping that track every now and then.
Yeah. What do you think their legacy is?
Oh, their legacy? That's tough, isn't it? I mean, like, I think the Fat Records back catalogue is the closest you can get to like NoFX's legacy. I mean, arguably it's Fat Mike's legacy.
Yeah.
But I think that the imprint that NoFX and their wider sort of like scene that they've created has sort of like left on punk music is just undeniable.
Absolutely.
And I think that you can hear bits of NoFX, or at least bits of Fat Mike in, Lagwagon, Against Me, obviously like some of Bad Religion stuff. But like I'd say that their legacy is how I can hear them in so many other bands' music.
Yeah.
For
I
me.
think sorry, I was just about to answer the question. I'll answer it later in my own very special episode. A very special episode sounds like I'm being bullied. It's just a
You
normal
are very
episode.
special, Eddie.
Well, I am
It's
very
important that
special.
you remember that.
And frequently bullied. I mean, I will be. What, you're doing a nerd podcast about NOFX? What are you, 15? God, I wish. If I had the opportunity to be 15 again, things would go pretty much the same, to be honest. I never learn. So, there's been a little bit of modest beef between, like, NOFX and Blink-182, for example.
Yeah,
Mike
sure.
has said that Blink-182 kind of stole their stage shtick. Stage shtick. That's good, isn't it? You know, that kind of thing. Admittedly, a bit more sophomoric, maybe. A little more American Pie generation of that kind of thing. But
yeah,
he might be saying that because he likes being a gobshite. You know, there's who doesn't love a gobshite every now and again. One of the songs on double album, I think it's Punk Rock Cliche, he gave it to Matt Skiba and said, please get Blink-182 to record this, but don't tell them I wrote it. Say you did. Because he thought it would be funny. And then the other two caught wind of it and refused. So NOFX recorded it and put it on their last record. I still can't get my head around the fact that Matt Skiba was in Blink-182. It's still baffling.
So crazy. The bit that blows my mind is that they got rid of Matt Skiba to get Tom DeLonge back. Like, who does that? We need the UFO guy. And I think whilst we are like talking about NOFX's legacy, one thing that I would recommend if people haven't seen it, there is a really, really great documentary about Fat Records that only came out maybe 3 years ago. I watched it at Manchester Punk Festival. They actually did like a little premiere of it.
A fat wreck.
Yeah, exactly. A fat wreck. And it's brilliant. Like it takes you through like all of the quintessential bands on the record.
Oh, yeah.
And one thing that I really like throughout the movie is they make little they make like little 8-bit caricatures of each band. So like each section, like each chapter of the movie is split into bands, and so like they'll come up with, you know, like Get Dead or like Against Me or any of these bands that have signed to Fat Wreck over the years, and they'll play like a little 8-bit version of one of their most popular songs, and then they've animated like a 16-bit as if they're like on Sega Mega Drive, and some of those are really
little Final Fantasy characters.
Yeah. But I loved
JRPG things.
The whole documentary is great, and it's got such a DIY feel to it. And I suppose that's what NOFX's legacy is. It's like the DIY element that's across everything they do. I know it was like it ended up being official in the end. It was all like official, like It wouldn't surprise me if it was fan made initially.
This is a question you added to this list, and you're about to be hoisted by your own petard, my friend. Favorite member of NOFX?
I mean, it should be, if I'm being fair,
right?
It's Fat Mike, isn't it? Because like, you know, there's so much of NOFX.
Only you can answer this. This is your favorite again.
I know.
I can't argue with you.
I know, but come on.
Show your workings, I suppose.
We all love Eric Melvin.
Of course we do.
So I think it's Eric Melvin.
Well, there you go.
I mean, like, what would NOFX be without the Mel Yell?
Oh, a sorry state worse. Vital and grossly underutilized for my money. Until recently. I mean, now he's the one who sings the verses of Sticking in My Eye, because Mike can't reach there anymore. So they did the Weekend at Fatty's video where they played all of White Trash, and that's when Melvin sang it there.
If he's singing a song, it's normally a banger. Like, I know he does a lot of 6 Years on Dope.
Ooh,
he's a little bit like it's like, you know, I don't like all of Alkaline Trio, but I think they've got some real standout tracks. And I tend to find any song where the bassist of Alkaline Trio sings is normally a good Alkaline Trio song. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's great, yeah. I like a lot of Alkaline Trio.
They're hit and miss.
For you, maybe. But the thing I like about...
I only on the tracks that sound a little bit too, like, Blink-182 NOFX2-ish, like, because I do think that they're almost like in between NOFX and Blink-182 in terms of their sound.
Cool. Well, this has been the first episode of Punk Rock Elite, a podcast about NOFX. We found out Red Redmond's relationship to NOFX. Thanks a lot for sharing that, Red. Now we've got a better idea of how you fit in with this.
Absolutely. And I think to add context to the podcast, I think that you are the punk rock elite of the two of us. I'm very much here for emotional support. But if you want someone who's like more knowledgeable on NOFX, like Eddie really does know his shit. I just quite enjoy how they sound.
Sure. I think due to OCD, I go through things in my head many, many, many times over, so they end up sticking. So if I find out a thing, I'll just repeat that in my own head forever. Mm-hmm. I didn't realise that that's technically intrusive thoughts. And if you do that, you can actually get some help, because apparently your life could be better, easier, and less sad if you don't do that. But what the other side of that is, the decades I've been doing that, it means everything I've ever enjoyed has been burned into my mind. A lot of knowledge, and I've got decent recall. I'm not sure about the elite, but maybe that's the context. Anyway, we'll find out in the next episode when Red asks me those questions. We'll see how long we go on for.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to that as well.
So am I. Thank you ever so much for listening, everyone. If you're not subscribed, please do. Share us around to people who you think would enjoy it. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye, Red.
Bye-bye, Eddie.
Hooray! Thank you for listening to Punk Rock Elite. It was a Pick Scraped and Frootcake co-production by Eddie French and Red Redmond. If you're not following us on Instagram or subscribed to the podcast, please do. The main theme and production was done by Eddie French. Please contact us at punkrockelitepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you.